finally get this to go. Finally. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Hi, everyone that's here. Sorry about the whole mess. Trying to get my face cam to work has been a bit of a struggle. Just trying to sort things out. We'll start in a moment. Oh boy. If anyone's here, just let me know if you can hear me well. You can hear me? Wait for more people to come and then I'll actually get started with this episode. Wow. Sorry about all of that. I did not expect that much stress. What's funny is like I did an intro video to test out that the camera would work, like, and that the audio would work, and yet I'm already running to issues episode 1, so I don't know anymore. Let's just ignore the issues at this point. I'm happy I'm able to get this running, and hopefully I could start soon. Oh boy. Meanwhile, how are you all doing today? And also, feel free if you want to ask me anything about what I'm talking about today, or if you want to chip in on predictions or anything, feel free to say anything in the comments. I can see comments and can respond, and I will try as best as I can respond to any comments. This is like a stress. Okay. All right. Let's get the show on the road. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of B-Ball with Benny podcast. On today's episode, we've got NFL Week 4 talk. Lots to go through. Browns, Vikings, a whole bunch of upsets, teams winning for the first time this year. We've got College Football Week 5, which there's a whole bunch of question marks to try to resolve from that week. Got Week 5 NFL picks and MLB postseason predictions as the postseason officially starts tonight. Let's get into this. Hi, I'm Benjamin Dickman. Welcome to episode 1. So, let's start off with college football. Ohio State Ohio State this week played Rutgers, who going in was 3-1. And going in, I thought, okay, good record, not ranked necessarily, but good record. Maybe it'll be like a good game. And other than one game this year, most of their games have been widespread wins or a close loss they had. But they jumped out 14-0 in the matter of seconds. And by that point, I knew this game's over. And just a great rebound by their offense, especially with the fact that their starting quarterback, CJ Stroud, was out last week with quote-unquote, or maybe not quote-unquote, but they say he was out with a shoulder injury when their game against Akron. Though honestly, I think they just didn't feel like they needed to start him that game. He definitely played well, 17 for 23, 303 yards and 5 touchdowns. The run game also had a great game with Travion Henderson, which is one of their premier big backs, with 8 carries for 71 yards and touchdown. And it just looked exactly how it's supposed to look. And the part that surprised me was the fact that maybe Rutgers isn't as good as their record shows, which definitely happens a lot in college football. And even though I've only been following college football for a minimal amount of time, I can definitely say it happens a lot. Aside from that, there's one question mark from this point in the season. It's relatively early, but based on how this year's been going and how earlier years have been going, there's a big question mark coming in, and that is regarding Clemson. Clemson this year is 3-2, and yeah, they have a positive record, but the problem is that their losses were bad games. They lost to Georgia 10-3 to open the season. I mean, only putting up 3 points, and that's aside from that the game was hyped up to be this big game, big offense, and it just ended up being 10-3. And then they go out literally a week ago and lose to NC State, who they should not have lost to, 27-21 in overtime, which that was like, okay, something's up with Clemson clearly. And then this week they won, but again they struggled once again, and again with another bad team being in Boston College. So my question I have been trying to figure out, and if you guys want, you can try to say what you think about it. Is this the end of Clemson's good days? Is this the end of Dabo Swinney having a good time in Clemson? Maybe not him being fired, but is this the start of the downtrend? And if you do want to say that, well, what was the official, I guess, start of the downtrend? My answer of the start of the downtrend, I would definitely say they're starting to go down. I think this is the start of falling and clashing down back to earth. And I think it basically started with the targeting call they had against them last year. Sorry, going back to the 2020-2021 season, in their last game, which was in the college football playoff semifinals against Ohio State, when pretty sure he's not there anymore. James Skalski was called for targeting, which ended up being the breaking point for that college football playoff game last year. And Ohio State went on to win big time that game. Oh, he's still there. Never mind. But I think that was the breaking point for Clemson. I think this is officially where we see them start to downtrend, and I guess we'll see what happens from there. Other than that, Bama versus Ole Miss, that was also said like maybe that would be a good game. Well, it wasn't. Alabama pretty much beat down Ole Miss 42-21. Another big college football game this week is Arkansas's Razorbacks versus Georgia Bulldogs, with Arkansas coming out of nowhere this year and really having a good year. But they were red hot going into this game. Georgia also being good. And then Georgia just beat them 37-0. I watched the highlights. The problem is there were 2 plays in that game that Arkansas was called for 3 penalties or 2 penalties. Just in one play, they were called for 3 penalties. Another play later on, they were called for 2 penalties at once. That can hurt, and that can definitely be a crushing blow, and that was definitely their crushing blow. Now, I think they could still have a shot at the college football playoffs, maybe even, or I guess more realistically, SEC championship game. But they've got more of a tough schedule coming up, so we'll see how they do beyond that. And the last top part of college football is the fact that I wanted to mention is LSU versus Auburn. LSU, since they won the national championship in 2019-2020 season, they've been going down, down, and down. Through someone else that I watched of content from YouTube was saying that if they lose, this could be the end of their LSU head coach Ed Orgeron's time there. And as of right now, he's not fired, but after watching the highlights, he could be done after this year. I mean, they were up 17 to like 10, or they were up big. They were dominating early. It was all them. And then they just squandered it and lost 24-17 to Auburn. Now, Auburn's not bad per se, but just the fact of how they lost that game is crushing, a tough blow, and I don't know. We'll see what happens with LSU. I wish I could say I'm going to do college football picks, but I haven't been following enough over the year. I've only been following college football for the last 2 years, and I'm not ready to go make weekly predictions for college football. Now to talk about what most people would actually be more interested in hearing about. NFL. What a week we had this week. Undefeated teams not being undefeated. Teams that were winless winning. Crazy week. It started with Thursday Night Football between the Jaguars and Bengals. One of the big headlines of that game is Trevor Lawrence versus Joe Burrow. And it was back and forth, and in the end, the Bengals barely squeaked out 24-21. And that was a heck of a game on both ends of the football. And just great game. It's tough that the Jaguars are 0-4, and I also feel bad because their head coach is former Ohio State head coach, so hoping things can bounce back there for his sake. Though they probably won't be in the playoffs or anywhere near it, but at least to get a bit of a better situation. And, well, things for him has even gotten more worse because there came out a video this week all over social media that he was at a bar with some random girl, and it's just a wacky situation. The owner's gotten involved, and he's like, the coach has to improve. it's a mess down there in Jacksonville. That's all I'm going to say from that game. Let's move on. Next up, Sunday was Browns versus Vikings, which was also Kevin Stefanski's return to Minnesota for the first time since he left. He's the Browns head coach. I also found out funny that the Browns special teams coach Mike Pfeiffer also used to be with the Vikings, so his return also. And going in, people knew it was going to be a defensive battle, but I don't know if people would have expected the way it played out. It was completely defensive battle. It was pretty much whose offense would actually produce more, which ended up being the Browns barely in their 14-7 victory. Vikings got the ball first. They scored right away. The Browns in the late in the second quarter got a touchdown and got at first we're going to go for an extra point, but too many men on the field for the Vikings. They took advantage, went for two. They got 2 field goals more down the line, and their defense stepped up big, which I'm happy the defense stepped up big because that was their weakness from last year. But their offense Baker had a rough week this week. And I mean, honestly, for the opponent they were playing, it was like a okay game, but really for Baker standards, it was not a good game. 15 for 33, 155 yards, no touchdowns. With the 1 touchdown, they had that game coming on the ground. And then again, Kirk Cousins wasn't that much better either. 20 for 38, 203 yards, and a touchdown and a pick. And that pick was actually a bad time to be throwing a pick for Minnesota. But yeah, it was a defensive battle. At the end of the day, the Browns were barely able to eke out that win. Next game, Titans and Jets. This is an interesting game to go through. Jets were coming in having not won a game at all to this point. And Titans were 2-1 coming off a weird win against the Colts the previous week. The Titans had jumped early, and it looked like another Jets classic loss from this year. But Wilson and the Jets stepped up, and they pulled out a 27-24 victory in the end, which I don't even know what to say about the Titans anymore. 1 week they look great. For week 1 they look bad. Week 2 and 3 they look great. Week 4, I just don't know what to say anymore about the Titans this year. Henry actually had a good game, 3 carries for 157 yards and touchdown on the ground, but I just don't know what to say anymore. They had a rough loss to the Cardinals week 1. 2 and 3 have bounced back, and this week just lost to the Jets. Then again, I don't know if I should but rough loss for them. Jets finally get a win and not winless anymore. And that's it for that game. And then you had the Chiefs and the Eagles. Chiefs coming off losing back-to-back games, and their defense did not improve at all this week, really. Once again, giving up 30 points to the Eagles. They won based on their offense, but it's their defense has just been giving them trouble. And once again, it gave them trouble giving up 30 to the Eagles of all teams, who are right now struggling very much. Just rough and I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens, because this week the Chiefs have a really tough test coming up against the Bills. I'll get into that predictions once we get into week 5 predictions, which will be momentarily. Next up, you had the Cowboys and the Panthers. At points, this game was close, but Dallas pretty much had it from beginning to end. And this was Carolina's first loss of the year. Dallas looked great. It was a win they very much needed. Diggs stepped up big time with pick. He's had pick, I think, in all 4 of the games this year. So good for him. And they ended up beating out a win 36-28. Final score in the Chiefs game, by the way, was 42-30. Next up, another winless team getting a win this week. The Giants and the Saints. Also, like the Jets game, early on was all Saints, and then the Giants started piling back to the game and won in overtime on a game-winning 6-yard run by Saquon Barkley in overtime. Saints are a mixed bag, really, this year. Their wins, they've looked pretty good. Their losses, they've looked bad. I don't even know what to say about the Saints, really, this year. We'll see what happens. That's going to be an interesting story. Congrats to the Giants on getting a win and not being winless. Speaking about winless teams that remained winless, and a game that probably a lot of the people watching this will be happy that I'm mentioning, the Bears versus Lions. The Bears coming off a bad loss to the Browns in week 3 where Justin Fields, you can't even really blame him for that loss. You can't. The week 3, he had no time from his offensive line. He got sacked 9 times. They came back and beat down on the Lions 24-14. They had the game pretty much from beginning to end. It was just all Bears. It's a good bounce back for them. Lions still 0-4, and well, since I could definitely say this, their coach, who's new, Dan Campbell, before the season during his first press conference was like, "We're gonna bite kneecaps." They clearly have not been any kneecaps to this point, sitting at 0-4. Then again, they only lost week 3 because of a 66-yard field goal that barely went through. Then we move on to the Bills versus Texans, which was just all Bills. Davis Mills was bad in this game. Bills offense really played how people were expecting the Bills offense to be this year, and their defense also stepping up big time, and which was good for them. They very much needed that at this point, as they got a good win with them having a big game this week, and we'll get to that with predictions coming up momentarily. We follow that with Colts and Dolphins. This was just, I don't even know how to really put this game into words. It was just, the Colts relatively had this from start to finish. And Wentz finally getting a win as a Colt. The Dolphins are not looking so good. Then again, they're without 2 others, original starting quarterback and starting Jacoby Brissett. So we'll see what happens. Next, we have the Washington football team and the Atlanta, as I like to call them since 28-3, which was Super Bowl 51, the Atlanta Lolkins, like LOL and Kins. Because once again, they blew another lead to lose another game, and this time it's a Washington football team who really not been that good. And Falcons really had it early. Like, they were looking good, looked like they might win, and then they blew their lead and just was bad. And then we move on to back-to-back divisional games. One was good and close, the other not so much. Seahawks and 49ers, it was very close, well-played game. Both teams played well, and then the Seahawks barely eked out a win. Russell Wilson had a good game, needing it very much. Not sure if there's much else to say on that game, really. But, yeah, Seahawks eked out a win. Then you have the other divisional game in the NFC West with the Cardinals and the Rams. Cardinals, one of the few teams left that are undefeated, and through this week they dominated the Rams, with that being their first loss. And it was also kind of surprising because, like, the Rams are now looking like they could potentially be in the Super Bowl, and instead they ended up just looking like they're, I don't even know what the right word to put it as. But yeah, they did not look good. We'll see what happens down the line. But yeah, Cardinals beat the Rams 37-20. Then you had Packers and Steelers. This game wasn't much of a competition. Steelers, it was all Packers from beginning to end. Steelers had a few things here and there, but nowhere near enough. It was all Packers. There's not much more to say to that other than the Steelers suck. They're the worst in the division, and Ben Roethlisberger should retire sooner than later. And that's even from a non-biased Browns fan perspective, he's done. They won 27-17. Then we had the Ravens and the Broncos. Broncos were undefeated to that point. Broncos looked bad in this game, and what was definitely tough is the fact that they lost Teddy Bridgewater, and that was the crushing blow. Ravens beat them 23-7. Sunday Night Football, which, as someone else put it, and I definitely agree to this, one of the most hyped games of all time, and yet it ended up being not as much as good as it was hyped to be. And that being Buccaneers Patriots, with Brady playing in New England for the first time since he left. It was a rough game. It was a mixed bag game. Buccaneers barely edged out. Though I think what was stupid was the fact that they sent Nick Folk, who's not really one of the best kickers in the NFL and not one of the most reliable kickers. They sent him out for, what was it again? For a hold on 1 second. 56-yard field goal, and he missed it. If I were the Patriots, I would, and they still had time left, I would have tried to at least get the first down with a fourth down situation. They went for a field goal instead, tried to take the points, but did not work out. Buccaneers barely edging out the Patriots 19-17. And then Monday Night Football, which by the score doesn't tell you really the story. It was a pretty good game. Chargers-Raiders divisional matchup. The Raiders were coming in undefeated. Chargers were 2-1. It was back and forth relatively. At the end of the day, though, the Chargers did outplay the Raiders, and they won that game 28-14. That is all the games from Week 4. So the current standings in the NFL, AFC East, you have the Bills on top at 3-1, followed by a three-way tie between Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets at 1-3. The AFC North three-way tie at the top at 3-1 between the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns, and then the Steelers, obviously, the bottom division at 1-3. AFC South, you have the Titans on top, and that division might not even be that great this year. And everyone else, and then you have Colts and Texans, tie at 1-3 for second and third, and then Jaguars 0-4. AFC West, 3 teams tied at top with 3-1 between the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos, and then Chiefs at the bottom at 2-2, which is still crazy to say that the fact that the Chiefs are at the bottom of their division. Then with the NFC East, the Cowboys are top of their division 3-1, followed by a football team with 2-2, and Giants and Eagles tied at 1-3 with 1-3 records. The NFC North, Packers are on top with a 3-1 record, the Bears being second with 2-2, Vikings being third with 1-3, Lions being last with 0-4. NFC South, Buccaneers and Panthers are tied for first with 3-1 records, followed by the Saints, who are 2-2, followed by the Falcons in last place at 1-3. And last but not least, in the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals in first place at 4-0, the Rams right behind them at 3-1, the Seahawks at 2-2, and the 49ers in 2-2 as well, and a tie for third place. So now let's get into Week 5 predictions. There's going to be some interesting games. Let's get into it. Thursday night football this week, you have the Rams and the Seahawks. The Rams coming off getting pounded by the Cardinals. The Seahawks barely eking out a win against 49ers. By the way, feel free to put in predictions of your own in the chat or comments, depending on whether you're watching this live or not. I'm not sure really where to go on this game. It's going to be an interesting game. I'm just concerned with the Rams after how they played last week. But I think the Rams will bounce back this week. And I'm going to take the Rams over the Seahawks. So then we get into the Sunday games. And it starts with a game in London, actually. 9:30 a.m. Eastern and whatever it is, whatever time zone you're at. 8:30 Central, etc. You have the Jets and the Falcons. The Jets coming off their first win, and the Falcons coming off blowing it to football team. This is like a toss-up, really, like a flip a coin kind of prediction. I'm going to say Jets get their second win. But it's really just a true toss-up. Then you have the Dolphins and the Buccaneers. Dolphins coming off losing to the Colts. Buccaneers coming off barely eking the Patriots. Not much of a hard decision, especially without Tua. Buccaneers is my prediction for that game. Then after that, you have Eagles and Panthers. Eagles coming off losing to the Chiefs. Panthers coming off losing to the Cowboys. I don't think the Panthers are losing this game. I have the Panthers winning that game. Then after that, you have NFC North battle between the Lions and the Vikings. Lions coming off losing to the Bears. Vikings coming off losing to the Browns. I don't think the Vikings are going to lose this game unless, I don't know, somehow something happens. I have the Vikings winning that game. Following that, you have the New Orleans Saints and Washington football team. I have the Saints in that game. You have Patriots and Texans. I have Patriots winning that game. Packers, Bengals, Packers, Broncos, Steelers. That Broncos, Titans, Jaguars. Titans, though, that could also be a toss-up. And then we have the Browns game this week, which is going to be their second test of the year, the first one being the Chiefs in week 1, as they play the Chargers this week in Los Angeles. This is going to be an interesting game. I think this will be an offensive game because the Chargers don't have that great of a defense, but I think the Browns defense could play better and defend better, and I think Baker will bounce back this week, which he definitely needs a bounce back week this week. And I think they will beat the Chargers at SoFi this week. Then you have a game that a lot of people will probably be watching that are in the chat. Bears-Raiders. Sorry, Bears fans, but I don't think they're beating the Raiders. Giants-Cowboys. 49ers, Cardinals. That's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to say Cardinals. Bills, Chiefs, Sunday Night Football. This is a big game for both teams, especially the Chiefs. They can keep the thing. This is how you explain the Chiefs. They can play up with these teams because their offense is legit and one of the best offenses in the league. But I'm just concerned about their defense, especially that it's the Bills and not a bad team. I think the Chiefs are going to lose this game. I've got the Bills. And then Colts, Ravens, I have the Ravens. I don't think the Colts are going to be able to beat the Ravens. And that is NFL Week 5 predictions. Once again, if you disagree with a pick, if any of my picks, let me know in the chat or comments. Or you agree, or you have any other input on the picks, let me know. I'm open to anything. And now, to end off the episode 1 with MLB postseason predictions with the wildcard game, AL wildcard game being tonight. between the Red Sox and the Yankees. The game will be sadly at Fenway. If it was at Yankee Stadium, I would try to go, but it's going to be at Fenway. With it being Garrett Cole versus Nathan Eovaldi. It's going to be a good matchup. A fun fact, and I do know a lot about history, so I'll throw in a bit of history here. They haven't had a one-game playoff since 1978, and that game is known as, to the dismay of Red Sox fans and to the cheers of Yankee fans, as the Bucky Dent game. I think the Yankees are going to win. I think the Red Sox have just fallen too much through the roof at this point. They were good early on, but they just hit a rock bottom towards the end. And I have the Yankees beating the Red Sox for the AL wildcard game. The NL wildcard game, which will actually be tomorrow from LA between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. The Dodgers barely missing out on winning the division. Well, technically they would have had to go to a game 163. Cardinals coming off a not active anymore, but at one point, which got them into the playoffs, a 17-game winning streak. To all the happiness of Cardinal fans, I do have the Cardinals winning. I just think they're too hot from how they finished the regular season, even though they did lose the series to the Cubs in the end. I still think they're going to beat LA for the wild card. That pitching matchup is Adam Wainwright versus Max Scherzer. Then we get into the ALDS, American League Division Series. You have the White Sox and the Astros. This is going to be an interesting series. The Astros have been a surprise to basically anybody and everybody coming out of nowhere. The White Sox, we knew that they were going to be great, but no one knew. I mean, I don't know if it was. Well, I don't know. Everyone knew they were going to be good this year. They were great. Not the best manager in the world. A whole lot of stories, 3-0 with Yerman Mercedes, who almost retired but didn't. Whole mess. Though I honestly am going to tell you right now, I have the White Sox out of the American League. I think they're the best team in the AL. In my mind, I think they really only have one hole and that's in their bullpen and Craig Kimbrell. Other than that, I think they're set, and I think they will win being the representative in the World Series from the American League. So I do have the White Sox being the Astros. I'm going to say 5 games. Another ALDS matchup, you have Tampa Bay and the Yankees. If it was Yankees as the top seed and being the home team, I would say Yankees, but being it's in Tampa, which Tampa's been a surprise, especially with how much pitching they lost, whether off season or even during the season. But I have Tampa coming out of that matchup, and then I'm going to say that'll probably be 5 also. And then Tampa White Sox in the ALCS, which I have the White Sox. I'm going to say that'll go 6 or 7. Then you have the NLDS, the Brewers and the Braves. Braves being a complete shocker, making the playoffs, even with Ronald Acuna Jr. getting hurt. The Brewers did not shock any. Well, I guess somewhat did, but somewhat didn't. And somewhat did part of the fact because everyone was thinking the Cardinals were going to win the division, and, well, they almost missed the playoffs. Brewers pretty much led a lot by their pitching. They have a great lineup 1 through 9. And I think they just have the better pitching, and I'm going to say they take that NLDS in 5 games over the Braves. Cardinals and the Giants. Sorry, Cardinals fans, but I don't think you're going to get past the Giants. I have the Giants winning that series. I'll say 4 games. Between the Giants and the Brewers, that's going to be an interesting NLCS. I'm going to say, here's the thing with Giants Brewers. Brewers have the better pitching, but the Giants' pitching isn't that bad really either. But lineup I would definitely give to the Giants. I'm going to say it's the Giants in 7. And then White Sox versus Giants. I think the Giants are going to end up winning it based on those predictions. And that is it. If you have any questions you want me to answer, put it in the chat. I'm staying for a couple more minutes for any additional questions you may have, or if you have predictions elsewise. But that's it for what I wanted to cover. I'm just going to look at chat to see if there's any questions or anything that I would note on to say. So someone in the chat said a comment that they think that the downfall for Clemson is no Trevor Lawrence. I somewhat can agree to that, but I somewhat cannot. I somewhat do agree and somewhat don't. Why I do agree is Trevor Lawrence is way better, obviously, no doubt, than DJ Uiagalelei. But the thing is that people thought the quarterback for Clemson this year, DJ, was actually going to be pretty good. So, yeah, in a way I could hear that. But again, like, it wasn't like Uiagalelei was expected to suck. He was expected to do pretty good. And that Clemson's offense would be good this year. But I don't know. It's an interesting point to throw out. I'm just not, like, sure I fully agree. I have the Giants winning the World Series over the White Sox in 7. And that's it for episode 1. Thank you those who were able to come for episode 1. A link to the intro video where I explain what this podcast is, about who I am, is in the description. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's also in the description. Thank you for watching episode 1 of this podcast. Thank you for whoever was able to come out and stream for it. Even if you're not watching it live, if you watch it after it comes out, thank you very much. If you enjoy this and are excited for the podcast, subscribe to the channel down below. And I will see you again next week, Tuesday, probably the same time for episode 2, where we get into NFL Week 5 and college football Week 6 and MLB playoffs. I'm going to close out with the outro song. Bye.